Next is Bridge South update. Tim, you want to key it up?
Yeah, I'll key this up real quick for our guests, so Mr. Lott and Mr. Page. And I believe Mr. Lott is pulling up his screen right now, but you'll recall a few months ago, back in December, I believe, we had an update on the Bridge South process, and just want to bring back our team to talk through what work they've been doing, some of the considerations that the DDA will need to wrestle with in the future as we think about a disposition plan for the west side dash lots. And so just want to have our team come back and talk through that, and then we have a little bit of time for discussion as well. So look forward to hearing your thoughts and reaction to what is presented. With that, Mr. Lott and Mr. Page, we'll kick it over to you.
Good morning. Can everybody see the PDF I'm sharing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. It's good to speak with you all again. And we're going to run through this quickly in the interest of time. So I would like to note that if anybody would like to spend some more time on this with us, we'd be happy to schedule a follow-up meeting or a follow-up discussion as need be. So we'll proceed, and please let us know if you have any questions as we roll through. You've seen much of this the last time we spoke with you. We're proceeding, we're going to spend most of our time talking about considerations and next steps that you're going to want to take in view of disposition of this land. But here are the key areas shown in pink, including the YMCA lot behind the YMCA or north of the YMCA. And just some existing zoning conditions, which we've been through before, kind of an analysis of the existing parking. We have almost 1,400 spaces that we're dealing with here on these various lots. And then we have an opportunity to gain additional street spaces as part of this work as well. We think that's important opportunity we take advantage of here. And then as far as these development scenarios go, again, this is similar to what you've seen in the past. What Tim and Mark have asked us to do is to provide kind of a range of development densities here. So moving forward, DGRI can evaluate development proposals and make decisions based in kind of this frame that we're providing for you. So our overall strategy, read through this quickly, 3 separate development sites at 3 different scales relating to context, better utilize street parking that we spoke of just a moment ago. We're going to propose centralized parking areas to increase supply while minimizing impact on the land. Everything we've heard in all of our discussions from stakeholders to residents has been obviously focused around housing. We all know there's a need, and this is one of the few large sites in downtown that we have an opportunity to impact our housing needs. Additionally, providing workspaces to support the entrepreneurial community in West Michigan. This is an aspirational goal that DGRI has had for a while, and we think that we have an opportunity here to help support that. Provide additional green space that can serve both the YMCA and the community. Provide better pedestrian connections to the neighborhood from the west side neighborhood to the new development neighborhood. And then improved access through the area through new connections and streets. So our study area again, as you know them, the existing conditions, if you need some reminders of what we're talking about here. And then we have our various development scenarios here, looking at them in 3 places. The consistency, of course, is these centralized parking solutions in which public investment would be used to provide these central parking solutions to aid the development. But this is our low end of density, where we're suggesting approximately 550 units as a total development. Everything you see here on the screen is about 550 units. We're suggesting parking in this diagrammatically and cleanly for discussion for 400 additional spaces moving forward that the city would own and operate. We're suggesting that happening on the Bridge Street site on the gray P that you see here over on the left of the screen. That project also would include the relocated fire station in the deck. That is something that the fire department is excited about and would create a singular city project there in that parking deck. And then as we move forward in the schemes, you see step up in densities along Seward Street to 4-story apartment buildings and higher towers along the freeway at 925 units. And then at our densest suggestion, we're north of 20 stories along the freeway and a total residential unit of over 1,000 units with the parking to support both the units and the additional 400 spaces moving forward the city deck. It should also be said that we've been working with YMCA on their parking needs and parking solutions as well. You'll see interspersed spaces here adjacent to the front door of the Y that are devoted to the Y, thinking that they're comfortable with a dispersed parking solution both in the street and some concentrated in front of their front door. So you see here also in a couple more details the additional green space that we've introduced outside the front door of the YMCA, which would be used both for their programming and for the community. And then a pedestrian green connector that would get you from the neighborhood to the west to the front door of the YMCA and into the neighborhood. So into considerations, which is really what we've been spending our time working on over the past couple of months, is how does this align, how does this scheme align with the housing needs assessment, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but just the high level numbers. You know, we have additional needs of over 5,000 rental units and over 3,000 sale units. And we have needs at all income levels.
Could we, sorry, Ted, can we make sure everyone's on mute if you're not speaking? Thank you.
Thank you,
Proceed.
Tim. And we have needs at all income levels for housing, which I think is an important consideration in this. So where does the housing needs assessment and what we're talking about overlap, and where do we have that opportunity for strategic overlap? In support of more LIHTC development, obviously leveraging publicly owned properties, support new housing, which is kind of the essence of what we're talking about here. Recalibrating economic development incentives to support more affordability. I think that can be in multiple places from both the DDA and DGRI side. Targeting 20 to 30% of the total unit count at or below 80% AMI. And then understanding that given this property's proximity to downtown and the tools that DGRI has available to it, that we remind ourselves that market rate housing is an important part of meeting the overall community housing needs as part of this. There's no way that we can put a level of density of housing right next to Grand Valley State University or any university without considering the idea that it would either be populated by students intentionally or otherwise. So it's something that we need to consider in this process. Student housing in this situation could have unintended consequences. Students can qualify as low income, which could potentially affect existing housing policies. Rents can both be higher with low income students, making the affordability of the community look worse. And then depending on the design of the student apartments, if we were to go that way, they're not necessarily translatable to a broader residential market. So if depending on disposal strategies, DGRI may want to retain some design control over floor plans and buildings moving forward. Having said that, student housing can have a benefit to this community and this location. Given the size of Grand Valley, You could have a substantial scale project with residences and avoid subsidization needs. The complex could be a key source of revenue as a garage tenant, a structured parking tenant. It will take student housing pressure off of other parts of the city, most specifically the west side, and it would create a dense customer base for retail-oriented uses in the neighborhoods, both on Bridge and in Fulton. So just some things to consider moving forward. There's certainly a reasonable argument for including some targeted student development as part of this overall project. As part of this effort, both Tim and Mark, as we've been moving through this, have said to us multiple times, we don't need another plan book. We need tools and strategies to implement housing on these sites. So what we've developed as part of this team are a couple of tools, a couple of spreadsheets to help DGRI and the city measure the impact of the affordable housing and the non-affordable housing, I suppose, as well, or the market rate housing as well. The first one is essentially will help DGRI independently identify the revenue gap in an affordable housing scenario to help it understand what needs to be funded as part of a gap, and what opportunities are there to fund as part of a gap. The second one, it will help the DGRI and the city understand what the income tax implications are of either fully market rate conditions or a portion of subsidized conditions where folks would theoretically have less income to tax. It'll help the city and DGRI understand what the tax benefits or costs will be to that affordable housing. We spoke about the commercial manufacturing space as part of the scheme. The intent is to provide business leases that are currently lacking in downtown. DGRI would control these spaces, manage the rents, and curate target businesses and constituencies in these spaces. The spaces are intended to be flexible so that they can be configured for a variety of tenants, needs, and uses. We're thinking industrial type finishes that are cheap and fast to construct while being easy to modify or remove in the future. And I think that's key because we may decide in a not too distant future that there was a higher and better use for some of these spaces, like more housing, for example. And we may want to be able to remove these pieces and put new uses in those places. The intent is that these features have accessible overhead doors and other features for light manufacturing while maintaining active street fronts for the users. So these are just some antecedent examples of some of the spaces that we've been thinking about, and these are simple industrial barn type structures that you see everywhere, but this is the kind of thing that we're thinking could be part of that overall development. And it could get more complicated if decided to make these more directly what we know is live workspaces, combine the housing into these light manufacturing units as well. So then from Sam Schwartz, our transportation consultant, just some considerations as well. The adding of the on-street parking will serve local destinations, slow traffic, and create consistency. We may need to modify curbs in these situations. I think that's been brought up by many parties in this, and I think the scale of the project can accommodate that. We'll need to look at dash routes and probably other transit routes as it relates to the road configurations and higher densities. Something that's been brought up multiple places as well is the phasing of surface parking redevelopment will be critical for the project's success. Essentially, we don't want to take all this parking off line at one point. We want to do it in steps to make sure that we're not adversely affecting the existing parking conditions. Access into the site is difficult, so it'll be important to consider neighborhood traffic patterns and access as the overall site is developed. And then we're including a pedestrian rail crossing, so we will need to work with the rail operator to make sure that works. So these are just some statements about the three various sites. Seward would be self-parked, and it should be understood that even at that higher density, it's a low overall traffic generator. And then in all these conditions, we want to maintain our bike infrastructure or enhance it if possible. The fire station, obviously they have their accessibility and truck maneuvering concerns, which will be part of any design. But it should be noted that the both from Mobile GR and Sam Schwartz, that is really the place to locate concentrated parking on Area 8. And it's something that the Bridge Street businesses have been concerned about as well, providing that adjacent parking to the business district. And then -7 and YMCA, obviously with modifications to the street grid, we need to spend some time looking at that. But again, concentrated parking located on Mount Vernon is really the place where we want to put a parking deck against the freeway and up against Mount Vernon. So that is the sprint through the work that we've been doing. We're happy to take questions. And again, if somebody wants to spend some more time, I'd be more than happy to spend some more time in a separate setting. So please let me know what you think. And Mr. Page, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you. That's a great summary.
All right. Any questions for Ted regarding the presentation?
Mr. Chairman, this is Greg. I have a question, and great work. I loved how this project is developing. I had a question about the mechanism. I thought I heard you say that some of those spaces, and I'm not sure the scope of them, but some of them, the rents or uses would be controlled by DGRI.
Yeah, this is, we glossed over this, Greg, but the intent is that these blue commercial spaces would be DGRI owned and curated commercial spaces that would address both diversity in business type issues in downtown and diversity in business ownership issues. But so, for example, DGRI is subsidizing rents for tenants in downtown right now. And so it's a way to potentially more directly address the concerns that DGRI has for both business function and business ownership in downtown. But it's only those blue boxes. I think everything else here is open for discussion about how it's owned, how it's operated. And I think those are negotiating points for DGRI as it gets closer to sale agreements with developers. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Yep.
And Mr. Chair, I would just say as the project develops, it'd be, I think, important for the board to discuss from a strategic standpoint as well as a principled standpoint, sort of the mix of competing with those who are funding us, and kind of where we draw those lines. Into commercial entities fund the DDA, and this would potentially, continue to put the DDA in more direct competition with some of our funders. So it's just sort of an open philosophical question.
Member Reddy, do you have a comment?
Yes, I was thinking about that question as well in terms of the properties that are listed in blue that the DDA would kind of give leadership to. And my question is, I would be curious and interested if we might be able to, and maybe it's not a we thing, but if there might be a way to work with the the Economic Development Office and others to think through how we may be able to begin to provide some sort of, I guess, ownership, if you will, ownership options to developers and entrepreneurs of color as well. And if it's not this project, maybe it's another project, but I would love for us to kind of keep that in mind to say, how do we create access, and what type of on-ramp might be able to happen with entrepreneurs of color and current and potential developers of color as well.
All right, thank you. Mayor Bliss, do you have a comment as well? You're on mute still.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. I appreciate Greg's question. I'm going back to the presentation we just had last week, though, on the retail study, recognizing that a significant part of the issue is the rent for commercial spaces, especially when you have restaurants and bars in the same area that drive up the cost of the square footage for those spaces. And so I do think having a deeper conversation about this and the benefit of that versus continuing to subsidize rents, because I know, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a limitation where we can only provide that type of support for 18 months? Unlike this potentially could be a space where we would have, we'd have the opportunity to support small businesses, even incubator space for small businesses to grow longer than 18 months. Am I threading these different issues together correctly, or am I off a little bit?
No, I think you're right on, and there's a statutory limitation on the amount of support we can provide through the retail incubator grant, and it's 18 months. So yeah, in this model, this concept, DGRI, DDA could be the owner, and then find ways to help support rent and/or entry for entrepreneurs in a different way than the grant that we currently have. Is the thinking.
Okay. Member Talon, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to add my kudos to to Ted on the presentation and the team, and wondering if we could go back to the slide that talked about so-called affordable housing. I seem to remember a percentage. Oh yeah, target 20 to 30%, and I guess I just want to think about whether we can up those numbers. I think it's a huge need. I feel like everything I've learned and understand about the housing situation is that we're more likely to get market rate housing built by the private sector than we are affordable housing. So I feel like our role needs to be to figure out how to get those numbers up. And I recognize the advantages of perhaps one subsidizing the other, and I appreciate the look at that. But really want to encourage us to get those numbers up higher if we can. For the 20-30% below 80% AMI is the number that I was looking at.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Member Reddy, do you have another comment, or your hand is still up? And you're on mute. No. Any other comments at all? It was a great presentation. It's an interesting look at what we potentially can do. And Mayor, I agree with you with having sat through the retail presentation. We really do need to, kind of talk about how we can react to that in a smarter, more intelligent, I guess, but more intentional way for our retail prospects downtown and and on the west side. So, any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Lott. Nice presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. It's good to see you.
You too.